afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Enforcing the Fundamentals with Doug Harding. Doug, how you doing?
Doing great, Matt. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. And as he's mentioned, I am Matt. You can tell we have very similar haircuts right now. Mine is coming out the back of my head. His is coming out from underneath the nosal region there.
Yeah, that's a throwback.
Yep.
I kind of went to a beard for a while there, and
Mm-hmm.
back to the mustache. I think I had mustache since oh my early 20s.
Yep, I have plenty of old photos of you with the mustache. You can see it in that lovely blue suit if you pause the intro
Yeah,
video that we
everybody
just saw
loves
as
that
well.
suit.
Yeah, you went many years
Everybody
with
loves
that.
that suit. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so you are off in the great northern. Well, you know what? Everybody likes saying Edmonton's up north. It's really not. It's kind of in the center of Alberta. Um,
Yeah,
it's a weird thing, Canada. We say up north, but unless you're in Inuvik or Tuk, I mean, most civilization ends about the middle of the provinces. There's not there. It's not like there's nothing further north, but really the major centers are about dead center at most. Um, so you've been out there. You grew up in Edmonton. You
yeah.
had well at least a few years there. You're a bit of an army brat, were you not?
Yes, I was, and yeah, grew up in the army camp in Edmonton. Actually, our when mom and dad and me and my sister first moved from, my dad was posted in Ontario, and we moved to Edmonton, and I was in Edmonton for I think about 8 years. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
eight to 10 years, and that's grew up in an army camp. Doing the army camp thing, which was really, for kids. They always have lots of activities for kids. Anything that you want to do, let them know, and they'll set it up so you can do it with somebody else. So, lots of people say, "Oh, you poor guy, you grew up an army brat." Well, I wasn't such a poor guy. It was
You
actually
were
a pretty good life.
That's actually not uncommon for folks in your age range. Really, there
Yeah,
was just due to the world climate of a couple of wars having happened, in the early part of the last century. A lot of kids were army brats, so
yeah.
it's
No,
really not that uncommon. So now you're in Edmonton. What ages were you in Edmonton?
I think I was 3 until
Hmm.
I was 10 or 11.
Okay, so you probably
11.
started playing hockey about somewhere
In
in
my
there.
backyard. My dad.
Hmm.
These are great. These are old stories, but this is a great story. Um, I kind of, I kind of wanted to take to the snow, and there was certainly lots of it in Edmonton, and our PMQs aren't that big, but my dad went out and built a little skating ice arena there for me to skate on, and the neighbors two or one over. He built one, and then they decided. I can remember the first year that they'd just join it, and then we'd have a nice big, arena to skate on. But I spent hours and hours and hours. I'd come home from school, and my mom would have my school snack ready while I put on my skates, and
Hmm.
and I would put on my snowsuit, and I would. There was no helmets. We didn't wear helmets in those days.
You know what? That does
I
lead
don't even
into
think there
something
were
else I want
helmets
to
in those days.
discuss, but we'll keep going on this one. No, you were
Yeah.
yeah, hockey before helmets was a thing, and it really wasn't that long ago. Um,
Yeah, no. Anyway, we built the one big arena, and literally, I would get home from school at 3 o'clock, 3:30, and I would be out in the ice arena skating and chasing my pucks into the snowbanks. And I would come in. My mom would set up some newspapers from the back door to the kitchen so that I didn't have to take my skates off. And my dad set up a bunch of lights. I don't know whether they're Christmas lights or what they were, but we sort of put some lights at one end because we didn't have enough lights to do it. And as soon as I was done supper, I would be right back out there, going for the lights helped me find the pucks in the snowbank, and the ones I didn't find, I had to look for the next day. But I can remember I spent. And then I'd come in just in time to go to the bathtub because I had frostbite in my feet. Like my mom could not get me off there until. So at first, I can remember when I was a kid that my mom thought, "Oh, you got to come and dump them right into hot water." Well, that didn't work very well. That was just more painful. So then. Well, I think my mom was a nurse, so she asked around what she should do. His feet are so cold, yet he won't come inside. And they said, "Hey, it's got to be fairly cold water, close to the temperature, and then warm the water up." And I spent many years coming in, close to bedtime and warming up my feet or getting my feet circulation back in the bathtub. So. That I even have pictures, both of me sitting in the bath on the side of the bathtub, and out there with my snowsuit on, just skating. My dad said, "I can't believe you do miles every day on that little arena." I said, "Yeah, it was pretty cool. I don't remember doing the miles. I just remember having the fun."
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really what it adds up to. Is it doesn't. I guess time flies when you're having fun. You don't really realize it until you sit down. Obviously, you probably didn't feel the ache and pain in your legs because you couldn't feel your legs. For the record, how many fingers and toes do you have?
I have 10 of each.
There you go.
So they're very ugly.
You know what? That's a whole thing. However, you managed to survive that ordeal without having to leave any body parts behind.
Yeah.
So that backyard rink. That now, when my brother and I were younger, we kind of ended up with one by accident, but we had a frozen pool, is what we had.
Yes, you did.
You might have messed up the lining because neither one of us were great at stopping. But that's very different than what you're explaining. So you say you had a backyard rink. How big was the yard? Was it the
yard was a PMQ size, so I'm guessing, it was fairly deep, maybe 60, 70 feet. But it was the PMQs were very narrow, so you about maybe 30 feet. And so by the time you added the next PMQ to you and the next PMQ after that, you were getting to a pretty decent size of ice. But the awkward part of that whole situation is every spring, because my dad got it started, we had to plant grass because the ice would kill the grass over the winter. My dad would go out and reseed all 3 backyards because I was the driving force to get him to build it in the first place. So thank you, Dad.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, he pulled it off. It's So I mean, he was reseeding lawns. We had to replace a pool liner for a rented house.
We did.
Yeah. So did. It's the sacrifices you make.
Nobody ever told me that those plastic liners and pools broke like glass, though.
When it's below freezing for that long, yeah, pretty much anything will. That's we were not gentle because, like I said, we were still not sure how to stop. I don't think I ever mastered that really. And we kind of just sort of ran into it. So there was all these little toe holes.
Yes.
Through the top 6-8 inches of the pool liner there.
And about 60 holes where your little brother shot pucks through it too. So,
yeah.
But after it'd been damaged the first time, I thought, oh God, I guess we
Well,
just wait for the fall and replace the liner.
It was. I mean, it's not going to get any more broke. Well, I guess it would get more broken, but it's not going to get any more in need of a replacement than once you punch that first hole in it.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, and you know what? At least you had time to save.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
you guys enjoyed it out there. So,
yeah.
And you had an enclosed and automatic board system of boards to sort of keep you inside too.
Mhm.
So, it was a bit of a shocker the first 10 minutes that you guys were on it, and to discover all the things that were happening to the liner. But like you said, after that, didn't make much difference.
Yeah.
We didn't have to replace it right then. We were only going to have to replace it once a year.
Yeah. I think we only ended up replacing it once. I don't think we did too much of the skating on the pool the following year, or we had moved.
We had
one
moved.
of the two.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was fun. I mean, it was a thing to do because we were kind of up in the hills outside of town anyways. So, what can you do? Sorry about that. I don't know how Greg feels about it, but I mean, you can bring that up with him the next time you talk to him. But you know what? I still see every once in a while. I mean, the backyard hockey thing is not dead. There's lots of communities out there that will, pull a fence down between a bunch of houses with kids, and they'll do a 2 or 3 yard rink, and then the parents can sit up on the back deck and have we'll call it a hot chocolate.
Chocolate.
We'll say how much. Yeah, well, however much Bailey's is in there is none of my business. But I mean, do you find that it's a lost art building that sort of? You got the lake outside where you live in Williams Lake, so you can get out there, and it's quite a big pond, but pond hockey. But you find that it's a bit of a lost art building these backyard rinks, or is it just one of those things like we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, where it's one of those differences between small town hockey and a more metropolitan area hockey? Is it just one of those? Because we're kind of tight for space in the GVRD, but I would imagine maybe not so much up in the smaller areas.
Yeah, I have a couple of neighbors. I don't personally build, but because they kind of like to watch this old guy moving around a little bit out there, they're quite surprised that I still can.
Mm-hmm.
And I have neighbors 2 over. He builds a rink that's probably close to a regular size arena, and then I have another fella that's about 1 space over on the other side. He builds about the same. And they kept saying, "Oh, come and help us with our kids," or our grandkids are coming over. Can you come on over and show them some stuff? And I actually feel really good about that. So the neighbor to the left of us, looking out, took his ATV with the plow on it, mm-hmm. and made about a 10-foot wide path between the 2 arenas, because they're about 200 or 300 feet apart, but now I can skate on one arena and then skate right down the path to the other arena. So that's the community itself making some rules and regulations to be able to move the old guy. I move better on skates than I do on feet now. So I have a lot of fun with it. Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it.
I mean, I think at this point, if we were to tally it all up, you may have spent more time skating than walking.
Yeah, because there was.
I mean, that's
after starting. I always did hockey schools, and I really loved doing hockey schools. From the time I was like 19 or 20 in university, I was doing hockey schools when I was home. My dad was stationed in Petawawa then. And I used to spend quite a bit of time doing local hockey schools. I don't know whether you'd call me your celebrity, but I really enjoyed teaching kids. And I get a big kick out of it. Doesn't matter where the kid's at. I love to see them just get better.
Mhm.
you can give them some little secrets on, balance or subside the fears that they may have, and they can make tremendous strides very quickly. So
Mhm.
I did kind of the same thing up here this year. I volunteered we have a very small school. It's only got 34 students in it, and a public school, and they rent the ice, or the community gives them the ice every Friday for an hour and a half,
Hmm.
from 12:30 to 2. And they take the whole school over and they skate, and it's just kind of an open skate. But the school principal there uh, kind of found out that I had done athletics with kids the year before, and he asked me to umpire some baseball tournaments for the
Mhm.
public schools, and that was pretty fun. It wasn't exactly baseball rules, but anyway, he said, "Oh, you're a big hockey guy." Uh, and I said, "Well, I don't know if I'm a big hockey guy,
Medium
unless
size, at
you're
least.
talking weight. Yeah, weight, we're pretty good." And he says, "Well, no, I've heard about you." So I said, "Well, how would you hear about me in Lac La Hache?" So apparently they did. And
Yeah,
he said, "Would
I
you
have it
mind?"
on good authority that when you hit town, it wasn't very long before everybody realized there was a new hockey skills coach running around.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, he said, "None of our teachers really skate." He said, "Can you still skate?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I think so." I hadn't skated since basically we'd left Vancouver. But
mhm.
I said, "It might take me a little bit." And he said, "Well, we really need some help because none of our teachers skate. And you've got 34 kids out there either sliding on their butts or crawling around on their hands and knees."
Mhm.
He said, "Would you mind coming over and giving us a hand?" So there was a public skate, uh, oh, uh, a couple of days um, before the school session. So I put on the wheels and threw on the skates and went out and skated around a couple of times and thought, yeah, I can handle it. If somebody's fallen, I can pick them up without falling myself. And so I said, yeah, I'd be glad to come over and help out. So we went over, and I said, do you want me to run some classes for them? He said, oh, can you do that? I said, yeah, I can. But I said, personally, for this small a group, and since they're thinking they're only here for fun, why don't we just let them go out in the ice, and I can go around to the hockey players and maybe show them a few things. I have one kid who's very good. Like
Mhm.
I even went to watch some of his minor hockey this year. He's he's an exceptional talent. He's really smart about the game that he plays. He's a little bit small, but I would think that this kid may be an elite hockey player at some point. Anyway, went out, and he was the first one to come over and say, "Hey, well, can you help me? I'd like to do this or do that." I think his mom had something to do with it, though, because
Mhm.
I went on the ice and just skated around 4 or 5 times, and all of a sudden he's over to his mom, and his mom is pointing at me, and all of a sudden he comes over. Oh, can you help me do this or that? So we did, and all of a sudden their best guy on the ice is asking me for help. Now I'm getting all kinds of kids. I have a little secret. How do I stand up? How do I balance? How do I move forward? By the time we finished the year, that whole school skates really well. But I mean, not many school kids have the opportunity to skate in an hour and a half every week for the whole winter. So
Mhm.
kudos to the school recognizing, you know, give your kids, some fun, and give your kids a chance to develop some physical abilities above and beyond what they have and may
Mhm.
never have without this opportunity. And I find that little school with its 34 students does a tremendous number of things that I am just in admiration of. They almost every Friday or every couple of weeks they're running something special. Like they run a couple of fix your bike days
Mhm.
where the whole school learns to fix bicycles.
Oh,
So
that's fantastic.
oh, it is, and they do all kinds of stuff like that. They learn native culture. I went over to help them paint the drums, native
Hmm.
drums they made. Had the natives come in and show them how to make drums, and then they asked parents to come and help the kids decorate the drums. That's how I first met the kids at the school. But
Hmm.
yeah, I get waves from the kids that walking around. Well, not that there's that many streets in Lac La Hache, but kids and some parents who will even. I went to a restaurant once and I had no idea, but the restaurant owners had kids in the school and they'd watched me both umpire the kids' baseball games and they'd seen me or heard about doing the ice stuff with them. And, they're just excited. And it's really a cool thing.
So retirement for you is a bit of a loose definition at this point. They saw you coming, and you're an easy touch with the kids. I mean, you've supported all my brother and I's sporting endeavors. Not that I had too many, but I mean, you went and coached basketball 1 year, so that was interesting. You've always been good like that, and the fact that you can do this with the school kids, teaching them how to skate, and adding a little bit to some possible future elite hockey players' resume there is not necessarily a small thing either. And you mentioned he might be a little small. Well, I mean, he's probably got some growing to do still.
No, he said, you know what? The first thing that I look at in players that I'm seeing first, given the opportunity to just skate around in the arena, is what is their natural skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I look at is what's their intelligence for what they're doing. And the thing that impressed me most about this young fella, he's very quick, he's a good skater, he handles a puck very well, but even more so, he's the only kid on its team who passed the puck intelligently. Not only received the puck,
Mm-hmm.
but when he was in a position where he wasn't going to be able to do very much, he really was intelligent about finding a player that he could pass a puck to. So I went and
Mm-hmm.
watched him play a couple of times, and it's got to be a little bit hard for him because I'd gone through this in baseball. His dad is his coach.
Oh, yeah.
His dad's doing a good job. I don't know what it is at home, but the kid is way above average in terms of his ability. And like I said, the thing that really brings that to the forefront is he always works hard when he's there with his school.
Mm-hmm.
He's always working on something. And he's exceptionally intelligent when he's on the ice playing the game. So it's nice to see that. I've had the fortunate circumstances to watch kids between the ages of 5 or 6 right up to 16, 17, 18, 19 that you can pick out right away as kids that have those traits, and if they so desire are going to be able to go to levels that most kids aren't going to be able to go just naturally.
Right.
But the work ethic is having the skill. Lots of kids have skill. You may even have a little bit more skill, but the next step up is, can you compete at that next step? And that's work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
Even at the level that you're at, if you have a work ethic, you'll always have another opportunity to step to another level. So, and that goes for all 270 NHL hockey players that I've had the chance to work with. They all had those traits as kids.
Well, I mean, you got to have them to get to that level. We've said this before, you can look at NHL, you can look at the, whatever the stats say is the worst player in the entire league, and you put him anywhere else, and he's the best player on the team.
Mm-hmm.
But he's had to have that work ethic and that drive, and, hopefully that not emotional intelligence, but that game intelligence to follow through and really keep the passion alive. Now, there's something. So these kids are out there playing in the backyard. They got the backyard rinks going. Some of them might be out on the lake, and then they go to the arena to do hockey or go for a skate. Is there I've never really spent a lot of time where I can remember. I mean, obviously I had the pool thing, but that was a little more still. However, lakes and backyard rinks, they're not Zamboni, they're not machine groomed.
No.
Do you see a lot of, getting adjusting their legs, adjusting their footwork to, what might be a little more rough as an outdoor, to that nicely machine groomed, smooth arena feel?
It adds strength and balance to be able to work on that uneven surface.
Mhm.
Uh, it's always nice to be able to go onto the perfectly Zamboni groomed arena in terms of tuning your skills, but in terms of just having to perpetually adjust both your balance and your strength to a rough surface, uh,
Mhm.
I think it's an advantage,
Mhm.
especially, you'd like that smooth surface to get started on so you have an idea of what you're doing. But to skate on that kind of ice, there's sometimes that I think that other than the arenas don't want you to do it because it destroys their ice, where it might not be too bad to practice once or twice a week on really bad ice instead of
Mhm.
always practicing on good ice. Just for that reason, the adjustment to balance, number one, because it's bumpy and lumpy, and to strength. You got to push harder, you got to work harder to get your things going. But we don't do that in arenas because it cuts the ice down too far and it
Mhm.
damages the ice too bad. But for those guys who, like I've said to Greg a couple of years ago, that the neighbors had arenas, and if his team's going up to Prince George wanted to stop by, and go for a skate on natural ice, cruddy ice, but it's a little bit much to go and play two games
Right.
in 12 hours and then hop on a bus and then get off and skate on bad ice and then pop back on the bus and travel another 3 or 4 hours. So I can understand why they don't do it, but it's quite an experience skating on natural ice. Some natural ice is much smoother and much harder than what arena ice is, but it's hard to find because
Mhm.
on the lakes it will get warmer and colder and warmer and colder, and it just makes the ice really rough. I
Mhm.
know the one neighbor that's two houses or one house over from me. He a couple of years ago, to smooth the ice out for his kids, he tried to make a Zamboni out of a 4x4 and what did he? I can't remember what he used to try and cut the ice with, but he
Mhm.
understood what a Zamboni was. And then he put a watering system together with a cloth on it, and he went out, but he got tired of doing that.
Yeah,
So
that sounds like a lot of effort.
it's a pretty
And
big
if you're
chore.
willing to do it, that's cool. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot of effort. So I mean, what I'm hearing is skating on this natural ice, this outdoor ice. It's could be sort of be likened to just like if a batter was going to put that weight on the bat to take his warm up cuts in the yeah,
Yeah.
just outside the dugout before he gets up to bat, something like that. Is you're training, or you do the parachute runs where your
Yeah.
body gets used to it, and then all of a sudden, when you have the ideal conditions,
It's easier.
oh,
Much
look at
easier.
this!
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Watch me go!
Yeah.
I got new skates. See how fast they are.
I know during the summertime in Vancouver at the National Hockey Training Center there, we used to bring in parachutes
Hmm.
and bungee cords for the pros. We used to have quite a few NHL guys that lived in the area in Vancouver, and where they used to come into the gym there and work with the weights in the mornings, while school was on, and do some on
Hmm.
ice training, and we would do some adjustments to skating techniques, that because those guys can't afford to lose their jobs. Even the guys at the lower middle end,
Yeah,
I mean, they're making million and a half a year, up to 2 million, and that's a hard job to lose.
I mean, you're taking a pay cut no matter what you do. Ideally, you want to be saving your money,
Mhm.
and you want to be smart with your money, and you want to keep making it. I mean, there's only so many jobs that are going to go astronomically higher. So you got to put in the time to do it. Like you're not, you can't sit at home all summer and not do it. Speaking of sitting at home all summer, we are getting down to the nitty gritty here. I was checking out the standings before you hopped on. I'm looking at the NHL. We are down to, at most, a team has 9 games left.
Yep.
At most. There's the New Jersey Devils in particular are down to only 6. They seem to be in a decent spot, being 6 in the East. We have 1, 2, 3 teams that have clinched a playoff berth: the Jets, the Stars, and the Capitals. Mr. Ovechkin is just shooting the lights out. He just seems destined to take a couple of those records away from Mr. Gretzky. And okay,
who'd have thought?
Right.
In all honesty, at the end of Gretzky's career, it would be nice to see him play another 5 or 10 years, but getting injuries as much as he got, but everybody said, oh, well, all his records are going to stand for, as long as they play hockey anyway. And to find, Mr. Ovechkin has stood the test of time. Just for the sake of players who are dedicated to the game, it's really nice to see, can Connor McDavid hang in for another 15 years and beat his? So, nothing is forever. Wayne came through. I was coaching junior hockey most of the time when Wayne was playing in Edmonton and all the rest. But I have to say that game was more open to wide open transition and goal scoring.
Yes.
And, the
80s,
that era closed, and it's hard. It's hard.
The 80s were a shootout. Those were high scoring games back then.
They were. I was really happy to watch a 9-7 hockey game. I like to see goal scoring, but
the fans got a lot of work cheering and booing, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't mean to make it sound like, oh, well, there were higher scoring games back when Gretzky played, because that does sound like I'm taking away from him. But no, not at all. It's still, he's still the great one for a reason. And to be on a list, if the only guy ahead of you is Wayne Gretzky, you had a pretty good career. And if you happen to be the guy that bumps Gretzky to number 2, that really says something about you. But Wayne's whole career was just record after record after record. And he may have the record for setting records at this point. I don't know about you, and it's been 23 years since I've seen it, but is Wayne in the Hockey Hall of Fame? It's, Wayne is good, but when you see his display at the Hockey Hall of Fame, I kind of liken it to the Beatles, where I think the Beatles are an underrated band because everybody's like, well, it's the Beatles. Yeah, of course it's good. It's the Beatles. But when you sit down and you really pay attention to the music, you're like, oh, it's the Beatles.
Yeah.
And that's, I think the same can be said for Gretzky. I think he's been Gretzky for so long. It's like, okay, yeah, it's Gretzky. But when you really look at it, it's like, oh my. And for Ovechkin to be closing in on that,
that's
good for him. That is impressive. And very few records are going to stand the test of eternity. He retired in 99. Yeah, Wayne.
Yeah.
So 25, 26 years.
25.
That's impressive. That's impressive. Now, anyways, to the point of my whole thing of people sitting down for the summer, we have 4 teams that are guaranteed to be on the golf course in a couple of days or in a couple of weeks. The Seattle Kraken, expansion team. Great arena, by the way. Really, what they did to Key Arena, changing it to Climate Pledge, fantastic arena. Been there a few times for wrestling. Nashville Predators, Chicago Blackhawks, and the San Jose Sharks. Now, all 3 of these teams recently were sort of sitting at the top of the pile come to this point in the year, but Not so much anymore, but rebuilding seems.
Yeah, especially San Jose has got some, exceptionally elite young hockey players. It may not, and even their record this year, they were basically being hammered
Yes.
into oblivion early in the season, and now nobody wants to play them that's struggling for a playoff position because they're starting to take down some people. And
Mhm.
Chicago, I mean, they've got some pretty outstanding young players, but they're as a rebuilding team, you rebuild with as much elite young athletes as you can, but you have to add a core of what I would call sustainability in terms of being able to play in the game. You
Mhm.
can't. You can't. You have to have a core of people that can fill an amount of your ice time,
Mhm.
and at least in the neutral side, if not the positive side, so that because there's a lot of pressure on these young hockey players. Chicago is a you know you have to look at Chicago. They've got what could be one of the best hockey players to play in the game here, and how that's going to develop for him over the first 2 years. It's been tough. It hasn't been his play, but there hasn't been enough support. So if you're going to be a winner, you need the rest of the guys on your
Mhm.
team to be winners or have winner attitudes too. And unfortunately, when you get in this rebuilding, you start shuffling players in and out, in and out, in and out, trying to find the right combinations. And for the young athlete, young superstar athletes, it's a pretty big adjustment to be dealing with new people all the time, and knowing that they're counting on you, and that that these players coming in, you've got to get the best out of them to match your own abilities to make the team successful again. So
Mhm.
it's it's hard. It's hard. So kudos to how I've seen San Jose progress this year. I guess I got to be the most impressed with that, as far as a team that didn't look like they were going to win 10 games this year, where they've come
Well,
as
they doubled that.
yep.
They're on 20. They have 9 games left. So they got 49 points.
How many
Um,
how many how many one goal games have they been in? Either one goal losses or one goal overtime losses. Does it say on there, Matt? Oh, I'm
no, I
sure
can't
it
see
does.
that. I don't see that
Okay.
stat here. But
Okay.
and that's another thing. Like I've said on this show before, and I've said it to people for years. One of the best playoff series I ever saw was the Mighty Ducks in Detroit in the late '90s. Might have been early 2000s, but
Hmm.
all 4 of those games went to 1 or 2 overtimes. It just happened to be Detroit won all of them.
Yeah.
It was a 4-game sweep, but I
Yeah.
think they played like 7 games worth of hockey
Yeah.
as far as the clock
Well,
was going.
you look at 4 game sweep, but the goal differential in the series was like 3.
1. Yeah,
One.
it was they beat if you put it all together,
Hmm.
Detroit won by 4 goals.
Wow.
And a
So
4 goals, and yeah, everyone went to OT.
yeah.
Um, and that's one of these things when you look at these stats, it doesn't necessarily get reflected. And
Yeah.
so you're sitting here and you're telling me, because you followed it a little closer than I have, obviously, the Sharks have picked it up at the end of the season. How important it is for this young team to go out there and keep shooting the lights out for their remaining 9 games? It's
It's makes a huge difference because they're working on team composition, and how all of their players are blending together to create the best opportunity for them to be successful.
mhm.
So if you're looking at 8 or 9 games, my team isn't going to be making the playoffs. You know, let's get ready for beer and
Mhm.
barbecue. You're probably not going to be there very long. You're not going to be in the league very long because
Yeah.
everybody sees that. Everybody sees that.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you would touch on that because you are fighting for a job. You're on a team that's currently sitting dead last in the league. Chicago's only 2 points ahead of them. You have at most 18 points to add to your current 49. You know you're not. You know you're headed for the golf course. the trade deadline's passed. You're not gonna, make that last minute jump to somewhere. So you're looking at, okay, I need to set the tone for next year. I need to make sure that, the boss sees I have something to contribute here.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Especially if you're a young player. If you've only been in the, I'd say young player, and you're talking middle of the road player, but you're talking about an NHL player. You're talking about extremely gifted athlete. But you want to be there. These are the most important games of your whole season.
Mm-hmm.
You want to prove yourself. Like I said, everybody's watching. Everybody's going to San Jose or Chicago going, oh my God, I don't want to lose any points to these, because these guys are all playing for their jobs, and me, I'm just playing to get ready, not just playing to get ready to playoffs, because that's incredibly important. But
well, you want to, if you've already clinched your spot, you want to keep it. You want to keep that in that groove. You don't necessarily want to, play so that you might get injured, but you don't want to step yourself down so that you're half-assing it. You've become the hare instead of the tortoise. You know what I mean? That sound about right to you?
Sounds just about exactly the way it is. Some of those guys play harder than those guys getting ready for playoffs.
And there's got to be something.
Playoffs still have jobs, and those other guys, as soon as their last day of the season, which is rolling around here in a couple of weeks, you may not have a job. So you want to play as hard as you can to prove that you should be there.
Yeah, I mean, guys leave the league every year. Some of them retire their way out, and they go on to other paths. Some don't get picked up, but it's got to be important. I mean, you might want to stay in San Jose, and I keep picking on San Jose because they're the bottom of the league, or Chicago, or Nashville, or Seattle.
Nice place to live.
Oh, I would believe it. I mean, you're right next to San Francisco. You got everything you want there. It's it's Northern California, but it's still sunny, and it's California, and it's great.
Yep.
However, there's a bunch more people, a bunch more teams out there. So even I want to stay in San Jose. I want to keep this job, but it's got to be pretty important to make sure that whoever is watching, and you never know who's watching. It could be the coach and the GM on the other side of the ice. It could be somebody on the other side of the country that's just doing research for what's upcoming. If you don't get to stay, you want somebody to go, hey, I have a hole in my roster. What's that?
Yeah. I say you notice that, they're never not watched. They can replay these games at any time of the day or night, 24 hours a day. They go like, what's Harold Smith? What's he been like? Boink. They bring up like 3 or 4 hours of video on Harold Smith by touching a button. So if you're going to coast it all near the end of the year, and somebody pops up those particular pieces of what you've done this year as what you are. I mean, if you aren't going to be in San Jose, it might not be that bad to be in, Philadelphia or Calgary or Boston
or like you might have somebody on the Capitals. It's like, okay, what? It's I'm injured, I'm out, I'm old, I'm out. And you're all of a sudden you've gone from San Jose to a perennial contender. Yeah. So it's got to be an interesting balance between shit, we didn't make it, and okay, I need to make sure that whatever I do come the fall, I still get to pack my skates and stick and go to work to play a game.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it's all about.
And it's unfortunate that may not be at that level for some of them, but I mean, look at Danny Hodgson. He had a short NHL career, but he spent most of last summer being honored and inducted into Halls of Fame across Europe.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So just
it goes back to, I mean, we're now talking about one of my favorite hockey players.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he'd have had a pretty constructive NHL career, but he's an incredibly intelligent hockey player.
Mhm.
not the biggest, and breaking his leg like he did, and basically spending almost 2 years out, and then coming back to, you know, I I have some issues with the NHL when
Yeah.
it comes to
Yeah,
that. Like they
I've
brought
heard
him
this
back,
rant before. We'll save it.
yeah, I'll save it.
I'll get you really worked up. We'll get a beer or two into you, and we can cut loose on that down the road.
Okay.
But yeah, and then then we got our top level teams, we got our bottom level teams, but uh, then we have our teams that are playing. I'm going to use the word scared, even though it's not quite what I'm looking for. I'm talking about the teams that are, right on that, say 6 through 12 spot
Yeah.
on either side, where it just comes down to one of those things where it might not even be your fault. You
Yep.
could have perfect games. Let's say, let's take the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're at 75 points. They're currently 10th in the East. They have 10 games left,
Hmm.
and they can go out. They can put up 20 points.
Yep.
Which is fine, which is great. But if that 20 points comes down to a tie for 8th, and the Canadians happen to get that one last point,
Hmm.
you're just sitting. All you can do is sit down there and watch. Like, well, this team and this team have games in hand still. We're done. We need them to lose.
Yep.
That's got to be mentally taxing in and of itself. It's like once you've done everything you can do, like a car crash on ice, you've got no control whatsoever. It's between you and whatever deity you believe is helping you out.
That's
That's
that's the issues for almost every team that's either 2 points into the playoffs or 2 points out of the playoffs. Every game, let's talk local. Vancouver's been playing playoff games for the last 10 or 12 games. And
as they should be.
they've played some games where there was a little bit of hard luck. They've played some games where they've given it their all and closed her up at the end, and then not been able to finish in overtime. And all of that. Every time you lose one of those, it's a heartbreak, because you know that there are becoming fewer and fewer opportunities to close the gap and shut the door, so that you have, the teams are so balanced nowadays. Like if you can make the playoffs, not a whole lot of people. Everybody says, "Oh, well, you're writing off the 8th place teams," but you know what? You've got examples like L.A. A few more than a few years back, came into the last playoff position and won the Stanley Cup.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's all possible. We got to make it, and
was
the
it
hard part is the bad breaks that happen.
was it Jonathan Quick was the goalie for that team?
He sure was.
And it was like he had a rubber magnet in his chest.
He sure did.
Because everything was bouncing off of him. I remember I had a bit of a gig emceeing the games, because the Canucks the year before had a very deep playoff run.
Yeah.
And that lasted 4 games.
Yeah.
Because the Canucks were done. And just sitting there watching them try to solve the puzzle that was Jonathan Quick had to be frustrating. But sometimes you run into that player, and it's just the way it is. Sometimes it's it's a Bure or a Gretzky that's just gone in a flash, and sometimes it's the goalie that seems like he's twice as big as the net, and there's just no way you're getting through him. So I'm looking here at the standings. The West is a little more spaced out. Currently, with 87 points, is St. Louis sitting in 8th spot. And then Calgary, Vancouver, and Utah are at 82, 81, and 78. So it's getting a little much to ask for, 5 points and nothing out of St. Louis on that side. Not impossible.
St. Louis is on a real roll now, too. Catching St. Louis, I think. Who's in front of St. Louis?
Minnesota is 1 point in front of them. The Oilers are 1 point in front of Minnesota.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
God.
it's 87, 88, and 89, and 8, 7, and 6.
Any of those teams can be in or out.
Yeah.
Any of them.
And LA is only 2 points ahead of Edmonton with 91. Colorado's got 94. So really, from about 4 through 8 is a tight race as far as who's going to end up with that last spot.
How about
I
12,
don't want to write anybody
12?
off, because miracles do happen, hard work happens, but that's a little more spaced out. But if we go over to the East, in 8th place is Montreal, currently tied with the New York Rangers at 77. The Columbus Blue Jackets are at 75. Then the Red Wings and the Islanders are right behind there with 71. So that race for that last spot is really tight over in the East. And then Ottawa is well ahead with 84 points. So, I mean, this looks to me on paper, which, paper's not flesh and blood and sweat, which is a completely different. So I'm not writing anybody off.
Little water on paper and it dissolves.
That's pretty much it. And you sweat enough on it, and then we'll do that too. But it looks like a shootout for that last spot over in the East.
Yeah.
And the East has
game counts. Every game counts.
Yeah, and with, like I said, with at most 10 games left, nobody is mathematically eliminated in the East.
Yeah,
nobody.
Yep.
Buffalo is sitting dead last at 68 points, and with what they got, it's possible. Yep. And you can't knock down that Cinderella story, because that's got to be one of the more difficult mentalities to achieve of the, that Disney ending. We pulled it off. We had a bad start, and then we're firing on all cylinders, and we're chugging ahead, and you're hitting this point of the year with great momentum and a good headspace, and then easy to lose.
Yeah.
That sound about right?
It sure does. It's takes a lot of thought each and every game going into, because teams are now not only looking at what they're doing, they're really hard following all the teams around them. The teams in front of them, are they winning? Are we catching up? The teams behind us, are they catching up? You want to be at least in that 8th spot to be, to feel that you have control of your own. So all you have to do is win 9 games in a row, and you're in. But like, take Vancouver, they don't know that right now, for instance.
Right.
But then again, none of them can. It's not only Vancouver. So it should have created a whole lot of super competitive entertainment for all us TV watchers.
Yeah, I mean, there's 4 teams are out in the West. There's still 4 teams that have that mathematical shot of getting there.
Yep.
I don't have all the data as to what everybody's schedule is looking like coming up, but you don't want to run into a Winnipeg Jets, and you don't want to run into a San Jose Sharks for different reasons, because Winnipeg is well ahead at this point. They're locked in. They're first in the league. But you don't want to run into that juggernaut of a San Jose Sharks, because that's going to get into your head. And it's like, well, but they were last, and they're firing on all those cylinders. They may not be going into the playoffs this year, but
that's the killer, losing to somebody who's
you're going to remember them.
But the teams that are out of the playoffs are really, really happy for every team that's in the playoffs that they can beat. So there's a whole different motivation there. It's almost more fear of the teams in the playoffs, struggling to stay in them, to play against a team like San Jose. So,
absolutely. If you're on the cusp,
and that's not a given anymore.
Now, here's one last thought, as we've almost hit our hour here. As I'm looking at these 4 teams with the eliminated mark by the back of their name, one of the things I'm also seeing is 4 teams with very nervous office personnel. Because let's be honest here, you're at the bottom of the heap. You're mathematically eliminated. The coach and the GM, and the their heads are on chopping blocks. We'll start seeing coaches and GMs shifting jobs, shifting cities, fired, left, whatever. I mean, I think we've already lost a couple of, have we not?
We have.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been some changes this year. So, yeah, it's the whole organization. I mean, if you're an organization that's brought the right people in and you're moving upwards or seem to be, I just kind of like the San Jose thing. Those guys seem to have made, certainly didn't look like it in the beginning of the year, but they weren't losing by a whole lot. They were just losing.
Right.
And now they're just winning. Not by a whole lot, but they're just winning. So, I mean, they're headed in the right direction. But Chicago over the last 2 or 3 years has made a lot of moves, and they don't seem to have worked out really well. They aren't steadily progressing in my estimation. So all my Chicago friends, and I do have friends in Chicago.
Yes, you do.
If you're listening, I know. Don't send the bomb, please.
Yeah, he's in Edmonton currently. Just
yeah. No, you're not supposed to tell them that. Yeah, no, it's hard. It's hard because nobody goes in expecting to do a poor job. The ones I feel sorry for is the general managers, and nobody doesn't research players that they're trading for or trying to get to fill to make their team stronger. You make a deal. I had a friend who was involved in this once. Makes a deal for a player that looks like can make a difference, a positive difference to your team. And the player as was probably could have and should have. You make the deal for him. He doesn't want to go where he's going to, either, family issues, or he knows guys on that team that he's not particularly fond of. He goes there and underperforms unbelievably. Like he just doesn't care. Maybe he's getting close to the end of his NHL career, and was only looking for a couple more years to get through, and then he gets traded from, let's say Alaska had an NHL team, and you were in Florida playing out your last couple of years, and you get traded to Alaska. And like, what the heck?
You know what? I think Roberto Luongo.
Who do you burn? You burn the manager or the general manager or your scouting pool for, hey, the guy was an exceptional hockey player. His team was looking to get older or younger, and so they traded him away as an exceptional, as a higher than average NHL hockey player to a team that, is trying to rebuild and maybe put some experience into their young core of players, and the player comes and that's the last place he wants to be. Is that the general manager's fault? Well, maybe, but you can only research fact, and then you're guessing at the rest.
Well, I mean, that's
Sorry,
I think there's got to be some scouting involved there, and I have no idea. But you see a lot of these stories, where there's NCAA, a lot of recruiting going on. They get to know these kids and what's going on. That may not be the case on this level in this league. I don't know. That actually fascinates me. We may have to get into the bells and whistles of that scouting infrastructure, especially since we're coming into summertime, and that's. They're going to be out there looking at who's doing what.
Yep.
Before the draft.
I did some scouting. I had a choice to. This is just after junior hockey, trying to look for a job. Junior coaches, team's not successful, fired. Now you're looking for a job. I had the chance to either go with an NHL team as a scout or to go with Central Scouting as a scout. And I went to Central Scouting because I have no idea why I did that. But I have friends who are scouts in Montreal. They're scouts in Oh, let me think. Where else have I no friends who are scouts? Oh, Colorado. I have a
Mhm.
couple of friends who are both with Colorado. I have friends who are in Vancouver with their scouting. Families that I've
Hmm.
gotten to know. Uh, if I'd look back after junior hockey, maybe I should have gone and done that instead of stay with the ice and play with the kids.
Yeah, well, you know
But I
what?
never regretted that. So you just
No, I
did a
mean
better
that's
job.
you. Uh, you were home. I mean, you were at the
Yeah.
rink because you were dealing with minor hockey,
Hmm.
but you weren't traveling,
Yeah.
and that's um,
That's a
you
big
know
travel.
we'll end this with a joke because I do want to get into the scouting thing. I
Mhm.
think we've covered a lot of ground here, but I had a buddy of mine and him and his brother, and I says to him, one of you must look like your mom, one of you must look like your dad because you don't look anything alike. And the older brother looked at me. He's like, "You know why we don't look anything alike? Well, why? Dad traveled."
Okay. Scouting joke. None of the
Well,
scouts on the
salesman
road will
joke.
ever
Where
admit to that. So,
yeah,
but anyway, yeah, no, yeah, we need to talk scouting, and maybe I'll talk
yeah.
to one of my friends who is a
I would
Girl Scout.
love that. I want to
See if
get some more
trouble.
guests in here, pick some more brains. We're at an hour, so thank everybody for joining us. Keith, in
Yes.
particular, jumping in the comments. Don't forget, people, the comments are open. You can join the commentary with us, get your questions in, add your 2 cents, because I mean that's what sports is. Just everybody gets their 2 cents in, um, but nobody's really correct until
Yep.
you have that point of view of holding the stick in your hand
Yeah, you do.
or the ball.
Thanks very much, Matt. All I got to say is everybody out there, be great because you can.